the end of the presentations. I do encourage you to go to one of the 4 mics in the room to ask your questions, because the session is being recorded and it will be available to delegates after convention is over. So it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Dean Reeve. He's the Executive Vice President of Sask Energy. This session is sponsored by Sask Energy. Dean will introduce the speakers to you today.
Good afternoon. I'm Dean Reeve, the Executive Vice President at Sask Energy, and I'm here today to introduce Ralph Leibel and Kevin Reese. Sask Energy is very pleased to be a supporter of the 109th SUMA Convention, and I'm glad to join you here today. Urban municipalities all around the province are experiencing continued population and economic growth. Now there's a demand for commercial and residential developments that is really unprecedented in most of our history as people who work in the infrastructure business. Urban governments are on the front lines dealing with developers every day. And from Sask Energy's perspective, we know what that growth profile looks like. In 2013, we added 7,687 new customers in over 350 Saskatchewan communities. So this growth is not just happening in our 2 largest urban centers, it is happening throughout our whole province. That's an increase of almost 5 times the number of new customers that we added 10 years ago. So we definitely see growth that you are experiencing. During this planning and development education session, Ralph Leibel from the Ministry of Government Relations, Community Planning Branch will explain urban government's roles and responsibilities in the development process. Ralph Leibel is the Executive Director of Community Planning Branch for the Ministry of Government Relations. Plus, you're going to hear from Kevin Reese and his personal experiences in the development industry and what urban governments can do to ensure the process goes smoothly. And I've known Kevin for a long time in a number of different capacities. He's the President of Carina Developments and on the Board of Directors of the Regina and Region Home Builders Association. With that, I'd like you to please welcome up to the stage Ralph Leibel and Kevin Reese. And I think in terms of order, Kevin's going to kick things off and then we'll turn it over to Ralph and then we'll have question and answers at the end of the sessions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Reese, as you've heard, and I'm very pleased to be speaking to you today. And it's fantastic that we have such a great turnout for this conference. The slides I'm about to present to you today were prepared by Mr. Stu Niebergall, who is our Executive Director for the Regina and Region Home Builders Association. So the slides today will reference Regina, but I want you to just kind of look past the Regina references and understand that this is applicable to all of the municipalities in Saskatchewan. And so certainly if you have some questions, write them down and be prepared to ask them after Ralph presents. So really I'm here today to just give you a little bit of a perspective as to what developers are really facing out there and in their relationships with municipalities, and also the political side of how development all fits in. The thing to understand is that we are in this together. If we are going to, I guess, handle the growth and the economic activity that we've been experiencing here in Saskatchewan, we need to be on the same page with respect to development and providing housing and places for new industry to come to and commercial developments. And so really collectively everybody in this room has a large part to play in making sure that we are ready for this growth. So I will now try the clicker. This is, hey, look at that. So this is just a little bit about my company and some of the developments that we are involved in, and they are all in the city of Regina. All right, so the first slide here is to illustrate that this is not our first housing boom or economic boom. You can see that back in 1977, Regina had almost 3,500 housing starts, and these are not just single family, these are multi-family as well. You can also see that in 1992, we had 189 starts, which is incredibly weak. But here we are in 2012 and 2013, where we've just been over 3,000 units in the city of Regina, and my understanding is that for Saskatchewan, we were probably just slightly over that 7,000 mark for 2013, which really ties in exactly with what Dean was saying when he said they had 7,000 new customers. So the numbers are consistent, and you know, we expect this growth to continue. I don't know if it'll be at the same pace, but it will be. It will certainly be solid growth. So that's something just to bear in mind. For Regina, and if you extrapolate this, I would say more than double these numbers if you look at the province as a whole. We bring about $1 billion of investment to Regina with 3,000 housing starts, over 5,000 jobs, and are one of the largest employers. This is the housing industry. It accounts for approximately $300 million in wages and millions of dollars to government through provincial and federal taxation. There's also future tax revenues that will enhance the city services and municipal services that you will need to provide. And of course, you know, I guess the growth in the value of the homes has probably been the biggest wealth creator for individuals in our province, and that's just been tremendous. So we believe that home ownership is sound public policy, and that all citizens of Saskatchewan deserve decent, safe, and appropriate housing. So this is a slide that just sort of gives you a little bit of an idea of what developers do. And you know, we provide capital for development, and we also, of course, subdivide land, which you are heavily involved in. We have to go through the entitlements and the approval process, of course, to be able to develop before we can do anything. And we are also a major, I guess, constructor and provider of infrastructure. In most cases, the developers are the ones that are not only paying fees and those types of things to municipalities, we are also looking after providing that infrastructure, which the municipalities will someday take over and manage after we've built them. We provide amenities to your communities with respect to recreational facilities and open spaces and those types of things. And of course, at the end of the day, we have service lots that are for sale for new residents. There is one item that's not really showing up on that slide that I think is a very important one, and that is that developers assume risk. And this assumption of risk applies not only to private sector developers, but also to municipalities, because many municipalities are the developer. So it's very important, I think, that you understand the relationship of risk and how that fits in with your development plans as you move forward. So this is a little bit of a sort of a synopsis of what you can do as municipalities and what needs to be done for a piece of property to develop. course, there's a lot of levels of government that we have to deal with. And certainly we have federal jurisdictions with things like clean air and clean water and those types of things that are listed up on that slide. Provincially, we have statements from the province, and there's also all of the regulations when you're dealing with larger items such as water, habitat, those kinds of things. And of course, when you zero down to the local level, you're dealing with municipalities' development plans, which we refer to as official community plans, which you will have submitted to the province for approval, and Ralph will talk about that as we go along. But then there's all of the other things that are involved at the local level that we have to really do a lot of work on and work with you in order to make sure that we provide a good development that fits in with the city or the municipality and how you want it to grow, and really make sure that it provides a good new community, or for that matter an industrial development or commercial development. So I won't review all of the list of the items there, you can read them for yourself, but there's a lot to it. All right, the local players I think are fairly obvious. Of course, we deal with the governors of the municipalities, the mayors and the councillors, the city manager and the deputy city managers, of course. Planning commissions are very important. Planning commissions are usually made up of people that are on council, but also people that are from all walks of life that really provide a different level of input and perspective on whether that development meets with what the municipality is trying to do. Of course, there's the administrative side of things where we have the planning departments that we deal with, the engineers, the planners, the parks and recreational people, and of course operations is also very important. A lot of our developments, we have to make sure that you have to be able to maintain them and keep care of them, because there is a point in time where we do turn these developments over to you to look after. And of course, there's all of the stakeholder groups and special interest groups that need to be on site as well. Infrastructure. I'm sure that's a topic that's being talked a lot about during your conference. I did not hear the Premier's address, unfortunately, but on my way over here, I did hear on the news that he was talking a lot about infrastructure. And you know, we really build the first levels of infrastructure as developers. And so it's important that as we're building the local level of infrastructure that we need, that the big major items are also in place for us. That might be a sewage facility, it could be a major roadway, it could be a zone level park. There are a lot of these types of things that we need to make sure that we have in place, and that there is a capacity. And I'm really encouraging you as administrators and municipal governors that you look forward and understand where you want your development to occur, and how are you going to fund that development. And then if you want your community to continue to grow, you're really going to need to have a plan to have that major infrastructure in place, that you can be prepared for that growth. The last thing you want to do is have a developer come to your community and show up in your doorstep and walk into your administration office and say, I've got a great idea for a development here, and then you have no plans have been made, there's been no studies done, you're not sure if you can handle it or what you should do, you have no idea about your fee structure and how that infrastructure will be paid for. So I would encourage you to really develop your plans and be ready for growth. That's very important. In addition to some of that major infrastructure, of course, we have to do some natural resource analysis, and those are a few of the items that we look at whenever we're doing development. I mean, how can you not pay attention to things like wildlife and wetlands and floodplains and all of these types of things? That's all part of the process of understanding what is around you and how that new development may be impacting all of our natural resources. Amenities. This is a very important area because it's a significant part of what makes a community vibrant and what the public will enjoy as they're living there. And also with industrial developments, sometimes you can have amenities of open space that are near industrial type areas or commercial type areas, and that's usually a nice transition between residential housing and some of the more intensive types of developments that are out there. So it's very important that these open spaces are planned properly and provide something that your citizens can enjoy. Site analysis. What we're doing on site analysis, we're really looking to what has happened on that site previously and the adjacent land uses, and we're looking for accesses to the site, infrastructure capacity and availability, and how that land is zoned. And this step is even more important than ever before, and it's not just for infill and for redevelopment sites. It's very important that the site analysis is thorough and that questions are answered. So when the developers are coming to you, that you work with them to really try to understand what went on in that site before and how it's going to affect the surrounding neighborhoods. It will also highlight any limitations that might be on that land with respect to restrictive covenants or environmental constraints, these types of things. I mean, we've all been watching the news and we've seen some of the things that have been happening with such as the railroad disasters, pipelines. All of these things are very important, and we have to live amongst this infrastructure. We know that, and we need to do it in safe ways, and proper planning will do that for us. Market analysis. This is a tough one because, as you saw from that slide a while ago, there's cycles to this business. It comes and it goes, and it's really important that when we're designing new subdivisions, for example, that we understand who our buyers are and what they can afford. And housing affordability is a term that's thrown out there quite a bit, and housing affordability has many different meanings to many different people. It's just very important to understand that whatever policies and fee structures that you develop as municipalities, that ultimately those costs get passed on to the end user, which is the new home buyer in some cases, or it might be the commercial developer or the industrial developer. Those costs do get passed on. So it's really important that your policies, your fee structures, those types of things, that you understand what impacts that will have on the end cost of a home, for instance. Financial analysis. Of course, as developers, everybody has their limits. Like we don't have endless supplies of money, and we need to be able to borrow to, I guess, build that infrastructure and build that community. And it's very important that we can have a viable development. If things are in place such as fee structures or our policies are driving up costs, it just might not be a viable sort of development after that point in time. So it's really important that we handle that. And the cost of completing any project involves many sources of financing, and it ultimately determines whether a project will be feasible or much less profitable. And costs can be affected dramatically by lengthy and complex government approval procedures, which are often the most unpredictable aspect of our business. In development, time is not our friend. It's very few instances where time will actually provide a benefit. Usually time, it's a roadblock, and the longer something takes to be approved, you have increasing costs, you have changing market conditions. There's so many things that can go wrong in there. Now, that doesn't mean you should be rushing through development approval processes, of course not. But we would ask that, as developers, that municipalities would, I guess, give those approvals the amount of resources that you need to make sure that they are approved on a timely basis. Or if they're not approved, to let the developers know why it cannot be approved and what changes might need to be made, so that it can be reevaluated and maybe retooled and come back to you for a reapproval. So that's all we ask, is that approvals are done on a timely basis. Oh, this is where there we go. You can see here that sound planning sounds like it's a rational process, but it's not always like that. There are politics involved, and that doesn't necessarily mean politics with the politicians, but certainly there are politics involved with any development when you come to getting everybody's buy-in, especially the community's buy-in. So these are four sort of key areas where the process of development and the whole thing can break down. If there are excessive or absolute controls, that's going to be a problem for us. NIMBY, you've all heard of the term. I'll provide you with a definition I think is pretty accurate, but certainly that is an area where you can help us. Limited land availability. If I guess in your official community plans, you have not kept ahead of the developers, and your land supply is becoming short, and then you find yourself in a situation where you do not have the infrastructure required that you needed to be ready for that growth, what's going to happen is your land supply will be so limited that it in itself will drive up the price of that land, and it will affect things like housing affordability. And then the last one, exactations, that deals with the fees that you would charge to developers. So excessive and obsolete controls. Really what we're looking for there is we need some flexibility that we can adapt to the changing technologies and innovations that consumers are demanding. It wasn't that long ago in the city of Regina, for example, that most of the land for residential uses was developed. It was a 50-foot lot. It was 110 or 115 feet deep, and I would say probably 80–85% of the land was developed that way. That's totally changed now. For example, in Regina, you're seeing a lot of narrower lots. You're seeing duplexes are back in. There's townhouses. There's condominiums. You name it, it's out there. There's lane product. In fact, the 50-foot lot, there's fewer and fewer of those being developed all the time. In some of the other municipalities where you have, I guess, more room, I'm thinking of a smaller urban center, you still will have 50-foot lots and bigger, and that's terrific. But any place where you're going to have, where cost is getting up there, you're going to see your cities are going to become more dense. Now, while we need flexibility because of the types of products that we want to provide, we also need some certainty with your growth plans, your sector plans, and your bylaws. Like, we really need to know what the game plan is in order for us to play by the rules and make sure that our products and our processes fit in with your municipalities. And I also want to understand, want you to understand that, you know, all the municipalities have been around for a long time, and they all have policy respecting development and bylaws, and whether it's zoning, whether it's building bylaws, and these bylaws have evolved over time, a long time. And what we're finding as developers is that some of the expertise that was in the municipalities when those policies were developed, those people have retired. They're not there anymore. And so that sort of knowledge of what those policies are and why they were written the way they were, that's lost. And so what we're finding now is that there's been another sort of influx of new people, good young people, bright and keen and eager to learn, and they're coming into your municipalities. And what do they have to go by? They've got the zoning bylaw, or they've got the construction specification manual, and it's their rule book. And they have to make decisions, and the only place they can go to is this rule book. And so all of a sudden, stuff that may have been interpreted differently by people with a lot more experience is now being strictly adhered to according to the bylaw or the construction spec. And they don't understand why it was written or what it was supposed to do. They just all of a sudden started interpreting it. And we've run into situations where things that had never been an issue in the past with, say, a building permit or something like that, all of a sudden now those permits are being approved. Why is it not being approved? Because it's being interpreted differently. And that to us is like a change in policy. So I'd really encourage you as municipalities to take a good hard look at your bylaws and your construction specifications to really make sure that they work for today's environment. You can all read this definition of NIMBY. I'm not necessarily a Wikipedia fan, but I think this fairly accurately characterizes what NIMBY is. What we're finding is that there's been more and more, I guess, efforts made to redevelop municipalities, and we call that infill development. There will always be greenfield development, but when it comes to infill development, this is where NIMBY really becomes an issue. And I think that municipalities can go a long way to helping developers deal with that whole idea. You know, a lot of people will think that oh yeah, we need a new home for whatever. It might be for somebody who's disabled or whatever that might be. It might be in a high-rise apartment building or something like that. But all of a sudden you've gone and you're redeveloping a park. Well, we really need you as municipalities to sort of explain to the citizens why this change is to be made, and you can really get out in front. We as developers would really appreciate that. We really don't want to fight that fight ourselves. We recognize that due process is very necessary, and with local governments, there's a lot of public input, and there should be public input into that, and so everybody will get to speak their piece. But we find that if they were a little more informed as to the development, that it would sort of smooth the path, because deep down everybody knows that that certain project should really be going forward, but it's met with a lot of resistance, mostly because people just don't understand it. So municipalities can go a long way in helping us with that. This slide is just to sort of give some perspective to what can happen under different types of municipal situations, and of course land availability. It's sort of a matrix, and you can see that if you have a strongly regulated environment and a really prescriptive land use policies, that you're going to affect the price of that product significantly. On the other hand, if you just let it go wide open and you have a totally market-driven system and it's a free-for-all with no policies, no bylaws, nothing like that, it's going to go the other way. So this little slide, and these are current numbers, by the way, it shows that Vancouver, you can get a, what is that, 400, and I got to look at my slide, I can't see that far. Just a second here. 477 square feet or something? 471 for $288,000. Whereas in Houston, Texas, where there's it's more market-driven and open, you can get a 4,000 square foot home for $280,000. Now, of course, those are under different market conditions, but the factor, it says Vancouver 9.5. That's a housing index factor for affordability that would show you that it takes 9.5 times your average income in order to be able to pay for that type of home, whereas in Houston, Texas, that affordability index is down around 3. So we're not, as developers, trying to tell you which one is better or worse. You know, you might think that we would just like to have the Houston model. That's not necessarily the case. We're just trying to illustrate to you that your policies will have an impact on housing affordability. So that's all that's trying to illustrate. Exactions. This is development charges and service agreement fees and government imposed costs. And I know Ralph is going to go into that quite extensively. Listen, developers need to pay fees. We get it. We understand that. And we just want the structure to be fair. Developers will pay their fair share of development and costs. Where it gets a little tricky is if a municipality, for instance, might be trying to make up a infrastructure deficit by charging a developer. You may have a developer come into your municipality that wants to have this great project, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, this is great, now we can get the swimming pool paid for because there's a developer coming and they've got deep pockets. That's not the way it works, and Ralph will talk to you about that as to what's allowed in the Planning and Development Act and what isn't to be charged for under service agreement fees. So but that developer should be paying their fair share. They should be developing streets, and they should be developing sewer systems and water systems and those types of things. But if it's a major upgrade to a water treatment plant or a sewage treatment plant, understand that the taxpayers should be paying their fair share as well, not just the new home buyer. And all of those costs do get passed on to a new home buyer. This is just an example of the dilemma that municipalities can find themselves in. This is what Calgary looks like to us as developers. Of course, Calgary has a very popular mayor, and that's terrific. But he has sort of laid out some goals for their municipality, and each one of those in isolation looks great. The problem is they don't all fit together. For example, the mayor has come out and said that they want to have strong support to contain Calgary within their urban footprint. And you know, we all know what Calgary's, how quickly they've expanded and how the growth has occurred and how spread out it's become. And so they want to do something about that, and they want to put some restrictions on that. And they want to say that 50% of new development must be occurring as infill development. At the same time, they're promising their citizens that they want to have world-class infrastructure, and that they want to have the lowest property taxes of any major metro city in Canada. But they have a high dependence on development fees to pay for all of that stuff. And so how does that fit together? You're going to have world-class infrastructure, 50% infill development, and you're going to get the development community or the developers to fund that through high fees. If they get too high, the developers won't develop in there. You won't have the fees. You won't be able to have the lowest taxes. You see what I'm trying to say? And just to illustrate that, more people moved into the peripheral of the Calgary Municipal Planning District than moved inside the Calgary Municipal Planning District in 2013. So what will happen is people just move outside of your municipality, and then you won't have the funds you need for that growth. So just be very cognizant of how your policies and your fee structures get worked into the costs of development. So that really, I guess it wraps up my presentation. I hope you found some of that interesting. We will certainly be available for questions after, and Ralph Leibel will come up now, and he's going to talk to you about how the government of Saskatchewan deals with growth and approvals and all those types of things. So this one's going to get a little technical, but it's very, very important that you understand this, and we look forward to answering any of your questions after. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm very pleased to be here. You're having a terrific conference. I know there's been some great discussions in the corridors and the presentations today and yesterday as well. I'm going to talk about being development ready and some of the tools that are important for you to be aware of and to utilize in order to help facilitate development in the province of Saskatchewan in your own community. Okay, we all know there's a lot of economic growth going on. It's an exciting place to be. We had the Grey Cup last year. We have the population growth. We have capitalization of that growth. People are taking time to invest. And as communities, I see across Saskatchewan, the communities investing in new growth opportunities as well. There's a lot of development opportunities throughout Saskatchewan I'm going to share with you today. As well, I'm going to touch a little bit about the development challenges that go on with it. And of course, those development challenges are still good to have. I'd rather have them than what we had in the past with the slow growth and things of that nature. So, what's been happening? Some of you may have seen this slide before. It's a graph showing the subdivision activity that we've handled at Community Planning Branch throughout Saskatchewan, excluding 10 of the cities that do their own subdivision processing. So back in 2003, 2004, we approved 1,622 sites for development. In 08, 09, you can see how it bounced up to 6,541 sites. You know, that's a big growth opportunity that's happened throughout the province. And then it's gone down to 4757, and in 2011-12 it was 3,583 sites that were approved. And I'll talk a little bit later on another slide that we're about 3,300, 3,400 sites. What did that look like? Here we are in 2003, 2004. The dark red is showing places that had more than 50 sites approved. Okay, so that's 2003, 2004. It was around a couple major urban centers. Here's 2008, 2009. A lot of that's around all the urban centers, major urban centers, as well as a lot of lakeshore development area. I know at the presentation yesterday on Saskatchewan, they're showing it was a band or a swath. You can kind of go from the southeast heading to the northwest there. A lot of development. I know in 2008-09 there's 2,000 cottage lots approved. Kind of an exciting opportunity. People are investing in cottages and some relaxation. Then in, oops, it jumped one on me. There we go. Then in 2012-13, this is just last year, it's still in those growth areas. The resource sector is certainly taking off. A lot of development happening around there, around major urban centers as well. So in 2012-13, total number of sites approved is 3,332 sites. The year before is 3,575, so it's plateaued off. That chart that I showed you is plateaued off. We're more than twice of normal. This is the new normal. It's an exciting place to be and an opportunity to raise and grow a family here. So with that type of growth, what are some of the challenges I've had experience and seen being experienced? And by the way, a lot of the scenarios I'm going to share with you today, they're not Ralph Leibel's thoughts or ideas. These are comments shared to me by other municipal councilors, mayors, Reeves, and administrators, sharing a lot of different challenges and things, and how do we work those problems out and facilitate them together. So development in infrastructure, process delays, compromise economic interests. If we're not ready for growth, we don't have our tools in place, we don't have our studies in place, and all of a sudden the development is now waiting for those things to be done. It puts it off a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months until the engineers can get their work done. So it's really important for both public and private investment to have that material ready to go. Expansion of infrastructure in many communities is at capacity. I know there's quite a few communities where their sewage lagoon is at capacity. You have 20, 30, 40 lot proposal being presented, and all of a sudden, where do we put the liquid sewage? And all of a sudden, we're into having to facilitate a parallel growth initiative, which Environment and now Saskatchewan Water Security and ourselves put together to try and help the development proceed concurrently with the finalization and contract work for the sewage expansion, so they can run tandem together and be developed at the same time. Limited services for schools, parks, healthcare services, those are all other different challenges out there. And a real critical one is the shortage of professionals. Your access to an engineer or a surveyor or a planner or a economic development officer, those type of professionals that you might need access and help from in order to advance and have material ready to facilitate growth. There's a shortage out there. Kevin mentioned the new people coming in that are relatively new to the business, and all of a sudden they're having to learn those steps and processes from someone else that's retired and had 30, 35 years or 40 years operating the systems for you. So, are you development ready? Do you have, they should all come up at once. Do you have an official community plan and zoning bylaw? Do you have the asset management plan? Do you have adequate sewer, water, road service capacity to handle the new project? Available supply of land, Kevin had mentioned that as well, for your residential, commercial, industrial development. Are your community services, fire, policing, all the enforcement tools available? Do you have access to those people to help facilitate those things? I was looking at a community, they're looking at a brand new 3-story or 4-story apartment going in. Do they have a ladder truck? They've never had a 3-story building going into their community. Those are different things to be thinking about. So, what I wanted to cover today, and I know the time is going to be really short, and I'm going to squeeze in a whole one-day workshop into half an hour here, is talk a little bit about the planning framework, talk about the importance of your bylaws being facilitative and flexible in handling development, critical component of asset management. Another key tool to facilitate growth is the servicing agreement and having the studies in place to facilitate it in an expedient fashion so that you're not delaying the subdivision because you're in 3, 4, 5 months of studies before you finalize a servicing agreement. Development levies, and something that some municipalities refer to as a comprehensive development review that can be very beneficial. So, We all know about the Planning and Development Act. It's what creates the authority for you as municipalities to facilitate and guide the community, its development, its services throughout the community. And it's just like the Municipalities Act, but for planning, subdivision, zoning, and those aspects. Preparation of a district or regional plan is another important tool that's available to you if you want to join and collaborate with municipalities around you in planning and having consistent bylaws within your region or area. I know with the Planning for Growth program that was funded here a couple of years ago, that we had 22 groups of municipalities, 158 municipalities get together, and I know there's 8 planning districts that have been created right now. And the whole concept there is that there's some that have one that has 33 municipalities in it, one that has 8, one that has 9 or 10 municipalities all participating. It's an advisory planning board, and the whole idea is to have consistent bylaws for the region. So whether the developer is looking in municipality A, B, or C, you have a consistent process. You may have been able to get a group of a planner, a building inspector, a engineer collectively together to try and save some costs, and at the same time make the process consistent for your area and make it more facilitative for yourselves to manage and work with developers. So having your plan prepared, the other one is your zoning bylaw, designation and zoning of land. That normally comes after the subdivision is applied for and you've got the mechanisms in place, the services have been planned and designed, and the servicing agreement is moving forward, and you got those things completed. You move forward with the final zoning change. Dedication of public and municipal reserve lands is a critical component as well. Developers or landowners that are subdividing land are required, when they're subdividing residential development, to dedicate up to 10% of the land for public recreational use. For a school site could go on it as well. For commercial industrial, it's 5%. And in cottage areas, certainly you want to make sure that people have access to the lake. And I know that in cottage subdivisions, the application comes in, it's a row of cottage lots right across the front of the lake and no access for the backshore lots. So it's really important to try and tie in some public access in those. You should just kick me, Kevin, when I go off topic into a whole bunch of other stories here. Your planning bylaws. What's the most important thing about having an official community plan and have it updated? Is your plan updated recently in the last 5 years? Because if it isn't, it should be, in order to help facilitate growth. And I know that in the conversations yesterday at one of the other presentations, there are some areas where some communities still aren't seeing the same types of growth pressures that others are, but you still need to plan for your community where it is, the services, the ongoing maintenance and refurbishing of it. Those things need to be discussed, and policies on that to provide that direction to others. So what does an official plan and the zoning bylaw do? It creates certainty for development. So the developer, the community knows where the future phases and growth are going to happen, and it also secures that funding. You know you're going to have to put in a lift station somewhere at some time in the future. How do you time that in to future development? So it's about securing your investment in infrastructure, as well as helping to secure that developer's interest in investing in your community. It reduces the liabilities, of course, because now you can actually see what those costs are, and you can keep things, your public safety matters being addressed. Your emergency measure plans can be tied into this as well. Official plans inform the public. It's your connection with the community. It's called an official community plan. Why? Because it's a plan for the community. It should not be a plan for a planner to be able to interpret for you. You as elected officials and administrators need to be able to read it. Your citizens need to be able to read it and understand this is the direction, and we agree with where council's taking our community, because we want to see these growth opportunities. We want to see some expansion of infrastructure to support that growth. We'd like to see some recreational services and so forth. As well as another point is intermunicipal cooperation. I cannot stress that more. We had those planning districts that I mentioned just a second ago. It's so important because municipalities around each of the tables here, a lot of you are experiencing the same things, and it's sometimes really good to get together and have a chat and discussion about what those service issues are. Some of the solutions, because I know the solutions around the table, it's not up here. You create the solutions and the ideas on how to facilitate growth and development. And others like planners and engineers and economic development officers, our job is to provide advice and options and come up with other solutions that other people have already done and bring that to your attention. So to be development ready, it requires collaboration. It involves your collaboration with the developers, the engineers, the planners. I'm almost repeating myself now, I'm jumping ahead on some slides. But development includes all these different people, the architects, financial institutions, lawyers, realtors, the citizens. The planning process is not subdivision and zoning. It includes a whole number of aspects about your community and about where you want it to be and what are the tools and mechanisms you need to put in place in order to be development ready and to facilitate the new opportunities that are available. So ensure your official community plan is up to date with its policies, and make sure you tie it in with the statements of provincial interest. That's a critical document out there. It's helping to guide municipalities and planners when they're preparing the official community plan for you. And one of the critical ones, I'll just bring that to your attention, is keep development out of the 1 in 500 flood event level. Over a number of years, you've seen a lot of flooding going on. If we can encourage development to locate out of the floodplains, then it's going to save you, the person investing in purchasing the house, everybody a lot of time and grief by keeping development out of the floodplain. And if it is going to have to go in the floodplain, flood-proof it to the 1 in 500 flood event level. Also ensure, I mentioned earlier, your zoning bylaws up to date. So, the role of the applicant. What's the role of the developer? Kevin was really good at describing that here to us earlier. It's about the partner in building your community. They're investing the infrastructure, the immediate infrastructure to facilitate growth in your community, and they're the investors, and you're an investor as well because you're both going to be putting components of dollars into the development and into the long-term growth. So it's important for the developer, or pardon me, for yourselves to understand that the developers, and Kevin mentioned this as well, the developers putting out a lot of risk, and they have to assess their risk and their investment with the long-term opportunities in selling the homes or the commercial developments and so forth. And it's how do we help manage that? How do we help facilitate it and have a win-win for the municipality and the infrastructure needs and the growth needs and for the developer? Sometimes it's good to ask them for a pro forma or a comprehensive development report in advance. I know in smaller communities they don't necessarily ask for that. We just get a plan or proposed subdivision in and that looks good, and they might work a servicing agreement. But most of the developers that are investing significant funds already do this material. But it's for those people that are landowners that now want to become developers, and they say they want to split off 20 lots right next to your town and be incorporated in the town. There's a whole role of responsibility change. They're no longer a landowner, they're a developer, and now as a developer they have some of these obligations to facilitate and work with you on, and you too with them. So complying with provincial and municipal regulations and policies, that's a critical one. Your zoning bylaw needs to be flexible and manageable, and it's easy to change for most of you. It's just a matter of, I know it can be changed within the month if it needs to be expedited. So your guiding development, what's really important is undertaking the infrastructure studies in advance. You need that in order to know how much to charge, your fees for the developer or for the what you're going to cost share in that development. Your role is to make sure that you're facilitating it, you're completing the infrastructure, you're making sure it's done on time, ensuring that the compliance with bylaws, the compliance with the provincial municipal standards. I know Sask Water Security Agency has their permitting processes for sewer, for water. You have a coordinating role with that, and quite often can help facilitate it between the developer and Sask Water Security. I'm going to jump ahead here just because of timing. Asset management. You've all heard of asset management. It's one of those tools that can help you in your future plans and your infrastructure. So please take time to look at what that is and utilize the tools that are available. It's going to help maximize the benefits of your infrastructure that you're developing. It's going to help reduce your costs and your risks over the long time. And it's going to make sure that you're providing the level of services that you want to provide to your citizens. You lay it out in that asset management plan, because that can be a tool in advance of doing your official community plan. It's one of those studies that helps to formulate your policies. I'm probably going to repeat myself here. Develop and maintain asset inventories. Reduce the overall life cycle cost of infrastructure. There's ways through the asset management plan to actually reduce the costs of maintenance by doing early preventative maintenance rather than letting something completely fail. It reduces your risk in all your infrastructure if you have that laid out. It identifies the critical assets and the impacts of loss of service. What happens if the one water pump for your water system goes down? How long is that going to take before it's replaced? Or if it gets flooded out because you happen to build it in the floodplain of the river or the lake. Have you done that risk assessment? Those are all critical things to think about when you're doing asset management planning. I'm going to just, because I recognize time, I'm just going to jump over a couple of these slides here. But here's one that you need to ask yourself on asset management. What do you own or responsible for? What's that inventory? What is it worth? You've invested a lot of money in infrastructure, and the province has partnered and developers have partnered in funding that infrastructure over the years. What's the condition of it? How much sewage capacity? How many more lots can you put into your sewage lagoon before you're at capacity? And if you're at capacity now, what's the cycle it's going to take for you to do the RFP in order to request for a proposal to get contractors out there to expand your sewage lagoon? Do you have any of those things in place and timed? What do you need to upgrade? What's the, sometimes might be some of the failure rates on some of the lines if they're significantly old. And when do you need to repair it? What's the life expectancy of the line or the lagoon? And of course the cost to maintain, upgrade, refurbish, all those things are important to have handy. And I know a lot of you are working on these things right now and looking forward to how to invest effectively, and I know you've done a great job over the years in addressing these things, and this is a new tool and an opportunity to help advance and make those decisions easier for you. So servicing agreements. One of the most important tools you have available when you're facilitating new subdivisions. It is about recouping all or a portion of the capital cost of on-site or off-site services that are being provided to the development or within the development. It's the capital cost. It's not ongoing operations or maintenance or things of that nature. It's just the capital cost. And I know sometimes there's been a few municipalities I've experienced where they just want to say we want $10,000 a lot. Please don't just put down a number. The legislation clearly reflects the need to show how you've accomplished, you got to the $10,000. Make sure you've done the proper studies, because when some of these servicing agreements have gone to the Municipal Appeals Board, they've been overturned because there was no substantive information to justify that fee. Was it the capital cost, or was it some additional surcharges that were being applied? Ensure the appropriate necessary infrastructure is provided to a development to the standard required by the municipality. And I got a call the other day on a question of, well, we didn't require the developer to put in the main trunk line, but we want him to do that now, but we've signed the servicing agreement previously. Can we still require him to do it? The answer is, I'm sorry, if that's what you signed in your servicing agreement, you don't have that ability to go back and ask for those fees later. You can try, and if the developer wants to fund that trunk line, then sure, maybe they're kind enough to do it. But once that agreement is signed, it's pretty solid. So I'm going to talk later on about the importance of having a third-party engineer review these things for you, and to have your solicitor look at it, make sure you've secured the proper agreements. A servicing agreement must specifically be requested by the municipality. At the time of subdivision, if you don't ask for it, and the developer doesn't ask for it, then once the subdivision is completed, you can't come back and say, can we ask the developer to do it? It has to be negotiated within 90 days of the subdivision application coming into your office. That's about keeping the process expedited. You can negotiate a longer period of time with the developer, but that's between you and the developer to do. Why do we require a servicing agreement? Cost of building, water, sewer, infrastructure is increasing. I mentioned in 2008 it had gone up 2% a month. Water and sewer constructed now allows for future growth. If you require the developer to put in a 8-inch line because they only wanted to put in a 4-inch line to service their project, and you see a new project coming down the way and you require an 8-inch line, there's an obligation to cost share that line with the developer because he's fronting those costs, or a good portion of those costs. Rebating back, I know some municipalities have looked at rebating back to a developer certain fees. Well, if the fees are being charged get transferred to actually the landowner, rebating fees back to the developer, how does the landowner who paid for that lot actually get those fees back? So you might want to think about that one. That was raised with me a while back. It's important to make sure that you're only charging for the fees that the developer's required, and yes, you might have to carry that cost for the difference between a 4-inch line and an 8-inch line. The developer can be required to pay all or a portion of those capital costs to install or upgrade the infrastructure that directly or indirectly serves the development. Again, council, it's your decision whether you want the developer to pay 50% of the infrastructure costs, the capital costs, or 100%. That's your decision, but before you make that decision, make sure you know what those costs actually are, because someone else in the community may come up to you and say, well, if you only covered 50% of that cost, who's paying the other 50%? You have to be able to answer that one. And what is it? How much is it? The waiver of the fee, it's important, you're working together, but you want to make sure that it's justified and clarified and accountable to the developer as well. You want to make sure you're accountable. Property taxes, this point number 4 is a critical one, and it was a councillor that came up to me and said this one. Property taxes of new development pays for the maintenance, repair, rehabilitation, retrofitting, replacement of infrastructure, of the existing stuff. And so that's what the property tax is about. The servicing agreement is for those immediate new services to that development. Normally they're on site, but yes, in some cases, if your lagoon is at capacity and you need to expand it for that additional 40 lots, you might have to ask for those indirect fees that are off-site as well. Here's a 40-year life cycle cost. I got this from an asset management presentation a couple of years ago. And over 40 years, when you look at this, there's 8.7% is the construction, that's the immediate infrastructure. 3.3% is the transition costs. 0.9% is some design, and 0.1 is design as well, or transition. But about 13%, let's say 15% of the cost of the infrastructure over 40 years is captured by the servicing agreement fee for those capital costs. And then the property taxes picks up the rest. The challenge is what happens if we're doing an expansion of a sewage lagoon and how we break that down, and I'm going to get into that in a second here. What can you charge for? Very quickly, just recognizing time here. Water, sewer, storm sewer mains, connections, streets, lanes, arterial and collector access, even though it's shared, you're going to cost share on that. Lagoons, excuse me, lagoons, street lights, signs, boulevards, landscaping, parks, recreational facilities, municipal fees. If no one has a planner, an engineer, or a lawyer on staff, but you need those in order to do the servicing agreement and expedite it, I've talked with some developers that said they'd be willing to pay those costs in order to reduce it from taking a year to get a servicing agreement done to getting it done in 6 months or 3 months. And under the legislation, you have the ability to charge those costs back to the developer through the servicing agreement fee. Oops. Okay, we got the whole page up here? Yep. So who wants to throw their hand up right now? So who uses a servicing agreement fee? Everyone put your hand up who has servicing agreements. Okay, the light's a little bright here. There's a few of you up there. So who charges, if you charge less than $1,000, put your hand down. So put all your hands up. So how many, and if you have less than $1,000 fee, put your hand down. Less than 5,000? Less than 10,000? Look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's a few out there. So, and then everyone's above 10,000. What's really interesting is, or more than 10,000, sorry. What's really interesting, I'm gonna bring up the next slide here. In 2008, we were giving presentations, and an engineer presented this at SUMA convention, and he indicated that in 2008, lots in small towns were going for $20,000 to $25,000. That was the cost of servicing, not the sale of lot, the cost of servicing. In cities, it was $35,000 to $40,000. And after the presentation, someone ran up to me and said, "We're from a small town, and our costs are running about $40,000." So that doesn't include the surveying of the property and other shallow utilities and things of that nature. That's in addition to that. And so it's really important to understand what your costs are for infrastructure, what the developer is investing in your community. They're investing a lot of money in your community with infrastructure to support the development. And so it shows to me that there's a real need to make sure that you charge a fair fee that's reasonable, that balances the needs of the developer and the needs of the community. And the legislation is pretty specific as to what you can charge and what you can't charge. So here's a graph that's kind of important to look at. The top red line is the costs that our branch just kind of roughly estimated for what the cost to service a lot would be based on those number of subdivisions that we approved over the years and that earlier graph. And so at the peak of 2008-09, it was about $160 million plus or minus. And we estimated that maybe there was a collection of about $82 million worth of fees at that year. So the only purpose of this map, and the numbers can be vary depending by community, but overall, based on the number of subdivisions, that shaded in area is an area where the municipalities chose not to collect the fee from developer and absorb that within the community. And so there's right off the bat, there's an infrastructure question of, you've got a tool to raise some funds for infrastructure, and to me it shows you're trying to do a fair, balanced approach between what the fees the developer is charging and the fees that probably could have been collected at the time of subdivision. But every community is different, and it's up to you as elected officials to decide on how much cost you're going to share with the developer versus how much the developer is going to contribute to the new infrastructure. Determining fees, I'm just going to jump over this really fast. You have to make sure you justify the fees. The legislation is pretty clear and I mentioned the points before. Here's a fast example of a sewage lagoon at $1.5 million. When you add in the land cost of $100,000, the engineering studies of $50,000 is probably light on that number. The cost of environmental permits, installation of pipe for 2 miles, lift station. Now these are just rough ballpark figures. $3.3 million. So how do you charge that back to a developer? Well, you take that capital cost, you divide it by the capacity, and you got your per lot fee, basically. It's a very simple calculation. So in this example, it shows 1,000 units. And if your community is, and you need to rebuild your lagoon, and you have 800 houses right now in your community, and you're planning for 200 more, well, you know that you can now go $3,300 a lot. So our 800 people that are currently living here, what are we going to charge them? That's going to have to be that percentage based on the 800 units. And then the other 200, you've got your calculation to charge for those new lots that are coming in. But you don't charge the full cost to the developer. You have to split that up, of course, between the existing lots and the developer's lots. Now, there is another solution to it, and that is if you don't want to charge the developer for this because you have those other 800, then maybe it's a local improvement mechanism. Notice I didn't use the word tax, but that's what it is, the Local Improvement Tax Act that you have available where you'd apply it across everybody individually. But those are your decisions to make on how you want to fund that. And of course, looking for grant programs, and that's supported where we can support that is a critical component as well. That's just a fast look at how to calculate out your servicing fee on one particular item. So what's important is have your servicing agreement fee and structure your servicing agreement already prepared, not when the developer comes in the door. It should already be done based on what are your needs of your community, what are your capital costs, your third-party engineering. All those different things should have been somewhat analyzed. Obviously, when the developer submits his infrastructure plans, you're going to have to get the engineer to look at that. But you need those things in advance so you know how much to charge. Important details: negotiation of the time frame in which construction standards are going to happen. The developer wants this up and running as fast as he can. So when can the roads, the sewer, the water, all those services get into place? What are the securities? A performance bond or a letter of irrevocable credit? Which one works best? Some developers prefer irrevocable letter of credit. Others would prefer to post a performance bond. So if they do fail in meeting those obligations, you can go to one of those components and get the funds to finish the infrastructure that needs to be put into place. It has happened from time to time. Provisions for the municipality developer to share costs. You're going to hear that all day long from me about how we share responsibilities for this. There's development levies. I know there's it's a break at 2:30, right? So we're going to run a little bit longer here. Is that a yes or no? Just eeny, meeny. Okay. Development levies. I'll just leave it on this slide and then bounce. The important part about development levies, if you have an existing lot in town and the developer is going to go from a one-story building and he wants to put up a 3 or 4 or 5-story building in your town, and now you have to redo the sewer and water, that's the whole purpose of the development levy bylaw. You need to have a development levy bylaw if you want to charge for additional services there. And what's critical is if you don't have a development levy bylaw and they do want to put in a 3-story building, you don't have the authority to charge a developer for upgrading the sewer and the water lines to have capacity for that new building. But it has to be solved. So I'm sure even without a development levy, there would probably be the art of negotiation between the developer and yourselves on how to cover those costs. That's a very brief overview of that, so I can jump over all these slides for you. Comprehensive development review. Some municipalities use this tool and it's very beneficial to them because it can be required as part of the application to the municipality. It's typically prepared by the developer's engineering firm or their planning firm. It's going to try and deal with the whole project to give you a good, sound understanding of the level of infrastructure needed, where, how it's going to have to happen. It talks about the roads, the utilities. If it's on the side of a hill, a geotechnical report. If it's in a flood-prone area, hopefully some flood protection measures. If not, let's try and encourage it out of it. But not in a flood way. There's some significant differences there. Also, a lot of developers have been required by municipalities to go do some public consultation in advance of the project. And so if they have that, they'll include that type of consultation for you right up front. And if they haven't, and they're coming in the door saying, we're interested in your community, we'd like to do something, you might want to ask them to provide something like this to give you the details so you can understand it, then send that off to your engineers and so forth. I think it's an opportunity for you to get more information from them. I already mentioned statements of provincial interest. If you haven't already seen them or read them, check them out on the web or talk with your administrator. They have some very good planning principles behind them that you want to incorporate into your decision-making processes. I'll leave it at that, just because recognizing the time. So, to be development ready, what is the most critical thing? You want to make sure you have your clear expectations, your goals, your processes laid out, so when a developer comes in, you can share that with them right away. They can get into doing their comprehensive plan and providing it to you. Also, you want to have your infrastructure, your asset management tools in place, your studies, in order to be able to share that with the developer as well, what your expectations are. Collaboration is critical. Growth and development in your community is a shared responsibility by yourselves, the developers investing in your community. I know the province has invested a lot with infrastructure assistance and revenue sharing opportunities and things of that nature, and we're all trying to participate together. It's very important. Seek third-party advice when you're dealing with projects, because certainly other professionals can give you some good ideas and good examples. And I'll go back to the partnership. Community is a partner. Community growth is a partnership between all of us, and I'll leave it at that so we can have a few minutes for questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. And we will take questions from the floor now. Please move to one of the mics if you have a question. You must have been very thorough, gentlemen. I don't see any questions at the moment. Well, both Ralph and Kevin will hang around for a few moments down here if you do think of a question. I did receive a text from one of the delegates back there that said that you had skipped over one of the things she had questions on, so come on up and ask him. So, gentlemen, on behalf of SUMA and all the delegates present here today, thank you. We have made a donation in each of your names to the Mike Badham Scholarship Fund as a show of appreciation for your presence here today, so thank you. And thank you as well to Sask Energy for sponsoring this session. There is a break now, so I encourage you to head down to the trade show area, speak with the exhibitors, see what they have to offer, and of course there's always a bit of free stuff there you can throw into your bags when you're walking around.